reveille. Look at us now, tip to tip.
Ooh, Jesus.
Start the morning combat.
Do you want a margarita? Yes! My God! It's us doing what we love. It's time to bang.
Oh, happy Friday to you, diggity donks. It's time for a special edition of MK L Squared, Luke Squared. How you doing, folks? It's the 18th of April, 2025, here on a Friday edition. My name is Luke Thomas. I am one half of your hosting duo today, joined by my namesake from Bong Island, New York. It's Long Island, Luke. What's up, my friend? How are you?
What's up, dude? I'm sorry I'm not BC. I know everyone's probably disappointed, but, we're going to have a good show here. Luke Squared taking over. Let's go, Luke.
Oh, yes, indeed. Now, there is no UFC event this weekend. They're taking a bit of a break after UFC 314. Of course, there was a lot of meat on that bone to chew on, but we'll discuss two of the upcoming with their fight night main events on the road, no less, both of them. So that's kind of fun. So we'll talk about the UFC Iowa main event. We'll talk about the UFC Kansas City main event. We'll compare them. But today, before we do all of that, it is a mailbag episode. Yes, MAIL bag episode of the show here. We solicited all your questions. You sent it to us at morningcombat@gmail.com. And here we are, ready to talk about it. Of course, if you want to send us any further correspondence, that's the place to do it. You can see it on the screen. Couple of housekeeping notes. First and foremost, thumbs up if you're watching on the video now. That'd be so kind if you would do so, as well as please subscribe. That would also be awesome. And of course, you can see the socials there below. Oh, yeah. I see you subbed out BCs.
I mean, I didn't. Mikey did it for me. I mean, we got to respect BC too. So, throw that up there. If everyone goes subscribe, Brian Campbell Experience. Good.
BC's having a wonderful time on vacation. He has told me exactly that. They're in the middle of earthquakes, on the West Coast and all that kind of fun stuff. But he's having an awesome time, and I'm sure he'll have some. He's back on Monday, right? He should be.
Yeah, you guys are both in studio Monday. I was just laughing with our producer, Matt Snyder. I was like, BC sends this beautiful video to us. He's like, I'm loving San Diego. This is great. And then 2 minutes later, we get alerts that there's been a 6-point whatever earthquake there. So they're doing well. They're okay. So shouts to the Campbell family.
I guess the people from San Diego were it was another day to them. They didn't seem quite bothered by it. But us East Coast people, we get quite literally rattled when the earthquakes start hitting.
Yeah, apparently Average Joe didn't even flinch. Shout out Average Joe. He's like, we experience this all the time. Nothing.
Any other things you want to say to the donks?
No, man. I mean, I'll be doing, this is going to air on Friday. I'll be doing a full card PFL watch along on Friday. Yes.
Wow.
I know. Shocking. Luke, it's Friday, leaving the Saturday open for the girlfriend. You got to be the best boyfriend 6 days out of the week. It's Friday this week. But yeah, so join me for that, guys. Main card minute, me and Gaff.
What time does that main card start?
Shit. If I knew right now.
I think it's early. I think it's actually pretty early this time.
I think the prelims start at 5, I want to say, and they usually just like run it into one full card kind of thing. So maybe a 7 o'clock, maybe.
I think it's 7. But I have some people that I know who work there, and I think they told me this week was a 7 p.m. start East Coast time.
Yeah,
so that's not compared to the 11 p.m. last time.
Dude, that was a terrible card too. This card is actually good. At least it has names on like each fight. You know at least one guy in each fight, but it's a decent card, especially.
And anything you want to shout out in particular before we get this started?
Fuck. Top of my head, I know like Josh Silveira is on it. I know Brent Primus is on it. I know Impa versus Fabian Edwards is the main event.
Oh, that's a great one. Okay.
Yeah. Shit. There's definitely other names. I'm just blanking on them right now, but good card.
All right. There you have it. If you're an absolute degenerate, that's where you know to go. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a bit of a mailbag today. As I mentioned, we solicited you guys for questions. You filled them up, and the producers picked some of them, and so here we go. Let's just have a good time. Are you ready, Bong Island Luke?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. First question comes to us from William, and he writes, quote, with an oversaturation of UFC events and a lack of depth in the upper weight classes, combined with boxing consistently delivering the matchups fans want to see, I find myself more interested and invested in boxing than MMA right now. Is this a trend you're noticing among your current audience? Bong Island Luke, I have to tell you, here's my basic view on this. I'd be curious to get your perspective. My basic view is that if you've got a big star in boxing or a hotly anticipated matchup, that absolutely has significant crossover audience. So, for example, Mayweather Pacquiao. Now, that's like the most ultimate example of it, but even smaller ones like big time Canelo fights, or something where you could understand Francis Ngannou fighting Tyson Fury, anything where there's an MMA hook and or a big name fighter in a really important bout that's got crossover. MMA fans will watch. But like, how many MMA fans watch the Boots Staniosis fight over the weekend? Fine fight. It's actually great result, but I just don't think there's that much audience overlap. Am I wrong?
No, but also in fairness to that Boots fight, it was airing during UFC 314, so I don't think anyone was really going to stop watching a pay-per-view to tune into that. But I totally agree, dude. Even my friends who are like casual combat sports fans, they're like casually watching UFC. They're not casually watching boxing. They barely even know who I'm like, oh, you see Tyson Fury's fucking? They're like, who's that? Like kind of wild. But I don't think no, it's definitely more MMA focused for sure.
I mean, you guys have heard me say this on the show. I always feel like, BKFC, not that BKFC could like run headlong into UFC and take an audience, but against PFL, you know what I mean? Against one championship, they are at different times, but I could see that because that audience has so much of the MMA audience built in. But like the Venn diagram of people who are hardcore into MMA and hardcore into boxing, they exist, but it's not big. It's just not big. Yeah.
It's pretty much you and BC and a couple others.
Yes, that's right. By the way, did you watch the Staniosis Boots fight? Did you end up seeing it?
No, because I was doing a full card watch along for 312, so it was during that. I did have a bet on Boots by decision, which obviously did not hit. So yeah.
He beat the fuck out of him. I went back and I watched it. He smoked him. Like, it was not even close for a round.
I got to check it out. I honestly, I didn't even see highlights or anything. So
Corner was like, we had enough halfway through. I mean, I don't blame him. Boots looked awesome.
Boots is next.
We'll see what happens next. All right. Question number 2. It says Luke in BC, but I'm just going to say LNLT. How about that?
All right.
Can you donks foresee a future where the TKO boxing belt becomes the most prestigious, surpassing WBC, WBA, etc.? With early talks of developing new talent, the strategy might be to focus less on signing established boxers and focus on investing in younger fighters, knowing that by the time the TKO belt gains real significance, many of today's top fighters will be retired. That's, of course, what the plan is. Since, quote, the UFC belt is not even real, end quote, and value is subjective, could TKO's belt eventually become the only one that truly matters? Have you followed this story at all, Long Island Luke, about like how they're trying to repeal portions of the Ali Act? Have you followed this?
Other than seeing you tweet about it, not really, but enlighten me.
So, I mean, the basic idea is as follows, right? What they're trying to do, the Ali Act does many things. It doesn't just do one thing. It sets up a bunch of stuff. And, one of them is, for example, you can't be a promoter and a manager at the same time, right? Another one is contracts, are onerous and whatnot. You have to keep them, they can't be too long. And there's other stuff too, but those are a couple of the main provisions. And another one is, of course, that the sanctioning bodies have to have a system for independent rankings. And then, of course, the promoter cannot control their own titles. And the reason for doing this is obvious. If the boxer can retain ranking independent of promoter whim, it gives him or her value beyond what the promoter can control if they had their own title. If they had their own title, they can control certain forms of matchmaking. If you leave, you don't leave with the title, versus if you left top rank as the WBC champion and you sign with PBC, you retain that title. Nothing changes, right? And so it just gives the promoter significantly more leverage and control. And of course, that's why they want to do it. There's really no mystery about that. That's why they want to repeal. Now, they don't want to repeal the whole Ali Act. They want to repeal, it sounds like what they're saying is they want to repeal just that portion. I'd be curious to see what the language looks like ultimately. And I'm also not one of these people who thinks that they're not going to get it, by the way. I tend to think that, like, I don't know. I don't know if anyone's going to stop them, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't know if they have the votes in Congress, but I wouldn't count against it. But to answer the question, like, could the TKO belt ever have more value? Well, one, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer because, again, if with the other belts, you can leave your promoter and then hold on to the title. Nothing changes. That is going to have more value. But what he's asking now, Luke, is, all right, what if we sign a bunch of young guys and guys who haven't really popped yet? We let the current crop of big stars kind of age out, and then we'll keep signing this sort of other tier that we're describing. And as they come of age, now when they hold the belts, those belts will be the most significant ones. And if you want to have the TKO belt, you got to go fight in TKO to go get it. What is your sense of how likely that is?
I mean, in the boxing landscape, I don't feel, when you word it that way, I want to say, I don't feel like it's that likely. When I initially heard this question, I'm like, yeah, there's totally a world where the TKO belt becomes the most valuable. Because personally, boxing is already oversaturated with belts. I don't know the difference between the WBO, WBA as far as like how prestigious they are. They're all just a belt to me. I don't even flinch when someone says, oh, I'm a champion in boxing. It's like, dude, all right, everyone's a fucking champion at this point. So I do think like if everyone were to buy into the TKO belt and there was almost like one belt, I love that world. But based on the way you're wording it, I don't see boxers giving up their leverage to go fight in TKO just for the TKO belt. It's probably going to be more of how boxing has been the last few years, where the big names aren't fighting the big names because they're in different promotions, like pre-Turkey era, you know? Yeah, I don't really see it based on the way you're wording it.
The other thing too is like, you know, whenever I defend the sanctioning bodies, people think I'm defending the way they do business, which is really not what I'm defending. I'm defending their existence, right? I'm just defending the notion that, because dude, they're so nakedly awful, right? Canelo, dude, did you see what they did to Bivol? Did you see this? Did you see this?
Whatever.
Canelo had a David Benavidez mandatory at WBC for 2 years, and they didn't enforce it. And Bivol basically was going to be stripped if he didn't take the Benavidez fight right away. And it was like, how is that possible? How could you let a guy slide for 2 years and not?
It's Canelo.
You know, of course, we know the answer.
Yeah.
But the point is, like, the job of the sanction, like the job of the promoter is to be like, I've said this before, you know, if you're a promoter in this game, MMA or boxing or kickboxing, whoever, dude, like who wants a Boy Scout for a promoter? You know, if you're going to be a promoter, you got to be a little bit scummy. There's just no other way to do this, right? Am I wrong?
No,
like,
I mean, look at them all. I mean,
yes,
you're right.
Like, there's just no way to do that, you know, and be Mother Teresa. It just doesn't work that way. So I don't expect, I mean, you expect certain kind of conduct, but, you know, it's around the margins. This is going to be what it's going to be. But the sanctioning bodies are the ones that are charged with actually upholding the integrity of the sport. They're the ones that are supposed to like provide this kind of architecture in a way to force certain kinds of matchups that preserve the ranking structure and the integrity. And they just regularly abdicate that responsibility. So they're hard to defend, but at the same time, you know, again, dude, no, let me just end on this. As somebody who's been in this game for a while now, one lesson that I've learned is absolutely nobody cares about the athletes. They just don't care. They don't care. Media, and we're guilty of this to an extent, you know, commoditizes them. Certainly the promoters, you know, they use them. The athletic commissions and the regulatory agencies, they don't give a fuck. I mean, here you have TKO working hand in hand with the Association of Boxing Commissions to gut legislation designed to protect boxers. Nobody cares. So unless the boxers protect themselves in this particular case, like it's a fucking wrap for them. And whether they will or not, I really don't know. I don't know.
Boxing gonna box.
Boxing gonna box. All right, question number 3. Here we go. From Angelo. Day one donk here, but this is my first question for y'all. Candidly, I'm fairly new to the boxing, he writes. BC is the reason why my wife and I started watching regularly rather than just huge mega events. However, being a longtime MMA fan, in some ways, it's spoiling MMA for me. Every time we watch them back to back, MMA striking does not look nearly as sophisticated. I have had this exact same problem. Okay, let me finish. One of the main questions is, why don't we see a more educated jab like we see with high-level boxers in MMA? I understand takedowns, but if you could touch on this, I would absolutely love your commentary and education. Also, BC, you really helped me to laugh no matter what, and no matter how rough the days are. Thank you for everything. Okay, Long Island Luke, have you ever watched boxing and MMA back to back and then seen the striking and MMA and been like, ooh, that's bad?
Yeah, but I feel like there's a clear answer for this. Like, if you're training MMA every day, you can't focus all your time on striking. Boxers have that luxury. They're boxers. They can focus on striking all day. Obviously, they're going to have a nicer looking jab and shit. Like, if I got to train takedowns, wrestling, jujitsu, all this shit while I'm training to be an MMA fighter, yeah, I'm not going to be as well rounded and perfect in everything. I'm trying to be good everywhere, not great at one thing. So,
This is why, like, you know, Jake Paul beating up on MMA fighters. Granted, a bunch of them past their prime. I understand, but you know, it wasn't really close in those cases. Kind of makes sense because he's a decent athlete and this is all he does. And you know, some of these guys are past their prime, but also like their pure boxing is not good. Also, something else to think about. You said striking, but it's really narrower than that. Because remember, you can't hit with the back of the fist, right? You can't spin back, and there's no kicking, there's no kneeing. It's literally just from the waist up, forward facing. And
no
that's
elbows either.
Yeah, no elbows, no nothing. And you can't collar tie. Like you're quite constrained relative to these other striking arts. So that's a big thing. Two, you know, these are sports in the case of boxing with a deep, relative to MMA anyway, deep amateur system. So by the time these guys who have gone through the amateurs are 25 years old, dude, they've got a ton of experience focusing on movement, footwork, positioning, balance, distance management, the whole 9 yards. But Long Island Luke, this is where I come back down on this whole thing. This is why watching boxing and MMA are fundamentally two different things. I mean, MMA borrowed, 10-9 must system. Oh, we want to be regulated by the commission. So all that shit's the same or whatever. But if you're watching boxing, you're watching, finesse. You're watching very specific kinds of finesse. And you can get versions of that depending on what kind of fight you get in MMA or what kind of fighters you get in MMA. But in MMA, what you're looking to me is more of a, everyone's going to have an imbalanced skill set, but you're looking for a more like a varied kind of combat. If I want a more varied kind of combat, I watch MMA. If I want real precision, I think that's where you go for boxing.
I agree with that.
I was trying to think of like what's another analogy for that, like in the real world. In other words, two things that are similar: one chaotic, wilder; one similar to it, but not chaotic and wild in the same way. Much more, a refined process.
God, I don't know.
I feel like, let me see if this works it out. I feel like MMA is like one of those diners that has like an endless menu. And
so every diner ever, like they all have an menu.
Dude. I mean, I've been to some diners where they didn't have much, but like a Cheesecake Factory where their food sucks, but you know what I mean? Like a ton of things on the menu versus going to like a taco truck and they got like 3 tacos and then that's it. You know what I mean? Like, and those tacos are fire. They're fire, but they don't do like a wide menu. You know what I mean? They focus on a few things. They do them really well. And then that's it.
That's a fair comparison. I like that.
That's kind of how I see it. All right. From 4, Richard, do you think there will be more location-based events moving forward? Times Square boxing events, Universal Studios for PFL, etc. Long Island Luke, what do you think about that one?
So I'm kind of confused by this question. Like the Universal Studios PFL thing is like a residency similar to the Apex. So like, is the question, are we going to get more residencies, or is the question, are we just going to have more events on the road?
So the Times Square one, they can't sell tickets to. It's invite only.
Oh, so are we talking like smaller venue thing?
Yeah, I think what he's trying to say is not so much like, is everyone going to copy the Apex? Although I think that would be part of it. But are we going to get these like, there's not many people in the crowd for one reason or another. We're doing this kind of in this way for that reason. We're just not going to go to arenas. We're not going to go to stadiums. We're just going to have these, for one reason or another, kind of white glove treatment on how the sport is presented, or sports in this case.
I don't see this happening more. I think it makes sense for a company like PFL because, no offense to them, but they're not selling many tickets. So you go to a smaller venue, it looks packed. It makes perfect sense. BKFC, they do that a lot. It makes makes a ton of sense. Boxing in Times Square is like a spectacle. It sounds cool and I'm into it, but I don't know how many places are you really you're gonna go to the Pantheon and do a fight there? Like where do we draw the line? I just feel like sure, as a one-off every once in a while, but at the end of the day, they got to sell tickets, dude.
Yeah,
They need
that's
to
the
make
problem
money.
with the question
Right.
because you're right. Like the Times Square thing is a one-off, and the PFL thing is a residency. To me, the question is, will they do more one-offs in interesting places? I hope. I hope. I don't need them a bunch, right? Like you, I don't need it every day, but every once in a while seems cool. Like didn't they have what was that basketball game they had on the aircraft carrier? Do you remember that? The college basketball game?
No, I don't remember.
It was like Michigan State and somebody, I forget who it was, and it was on the surface of it was docked, obviously. It was a docked naval aircraft carrier. And they put a basketball court on top of it and they played. I mean, it might have been like Michigan State versus Navy or something. I forget who it was. But that was like a cool thing. And all the seats on like the bleachers were on the deck, it was kind of cool. How do you feel about the residency for PFL?
I think it's a smart decision, but I'm a little like, I don't know if bummed is the right word, but I like when you go to different markets. I like, especially someone like PFL, go to a depleted market, like go somewhere that's UFC starved. UFC hasn't been there in years because that's where you're going to gain your fans. They have their best success in Europe because the UFC rarely goes to Europe.
Right.
So like, I don't know. I do kind of hate the Universal Studios aspect of it, but if it's working for them and they're making money, more power to them. I'm fine with it.
My thought was this. I didn't think they should have opened the season there. I felt like they should, and again, they didn't. The first PFL event of the year, correct me if I'm wrong, was the Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes fight, correct?
Yeah, that was in
January,
yeah.
right? So that was their first fight of the year. Okay, fine, but that was in Qatar. I guess I'm trying to point out this, and I'd be curious to get your response, which is, would it have not made a little bit more sense for them, to the extent possible, to start, as you pointed out, one of these like mid-major markets, like a Lincoln, Nebraska, or something, even where I was, Iowa City, for crying out loud. If you're at Universal Studios and you're already not selling tickets, are you really that concerned with how much money you're generating at the gate versus just kind of filling it with fans, right? And having this big sound. I felt like they should have opened with like a big boom kind of event, like here where we've arrived, new rules, new look, new angle and everything, rather than going like right to a studio to start off the season. It just felt like it looked good on TV. It looked like it was executed well, but it felt a little flat to me.
I agree 100%. Also, like, I'm not too familiar with Universal Studios, but like, isn't that like at Disney? So like, aren't majority of the people?
No, I'm not sure if they're. No, I think those are separate facilities.
Oh, all right. So maybe my point is null and void. But like, for example, Penn Station, Madison Square Garden's right above it. Half of the ticket sales from Knicks, Rangers games, whatever, are from tourists just coming through going, oh, I can see a game up here, whatever. I kind of feel like Universal Studio, at least in my head, has that vibe where it's like people on vacation and they're like, oh, there's a fight, let's go check it out, rather than actual fight fans who are like,
dude, if you're going to Universal Studios, you're going with your kids. Like,
that's what I'm saying. Like, and the dad who had a couple beers at dinner is like, I'm gonna go check out these fights, babe. I'll meet you later. Like, so I don't think it's like the biggest diehard fans being like, oh my god, I got to see Jason Jackson at Universal Studios tonight. Like,
bro, you know what the move was? They should have gone to Tachi Palace.
I mean, someone's got to go. They're deprived.
They're owed. By the way, a producer's telling me it was Syracuse, San Diego State that was on that aircraft carrier game.
Gotcha.
That's who was there. All right, we keep it moving. From William. With the UFC investing heavily in grappling, grappling sports, events like CJI offering substantial prize money and NIL deals allowing college wrestlers to earn solid income, what impact will this have on the depth of the UFC and other MMA organizations' rosters? Will fewer high-level wrestlers and grapplers transition to MMA, and how will this influence the sport as a whole? Can I tell you very quickly? I would love to get your perspective on this. I am terrified of this. Terrified. What do you think?
I agree 100%. Look at like who was arguably the biggest stars in their disciplines the last 10 years. Jordan Burroughs in wrestling, Gordon Ryan in jiu-jitsu. There's a reason those guys never went to MMA. They were like, I'm getting a shitload of money to not get punched in the face and just stick to my craft. Why would I do this? They're the outliers. They're like the superstars. But if you're telling me, you know, some guy who is a D1 wrestler, but, you know, maybe never won a college NCAA championship, whatever the hell it's called, like, these are the guys who can now get tens of thousands of dollars to compete in grappling or wrestling tournaments and not have to go to the UFC. Like, they're going to do it, dude. And we should all be worried as fans. We're not going to get like elite grapplers or guys from other disciplines coming over at this point if they're being paid handsomely in their own thing. But at the same time, good for them, you know?
Dude, I interviewed Dan Gable about this. I interviewed Jeff Blatnick about this. These are two guys who obviously were instrumental, like, you know, in the one case in the UFC world, but obviously both in the amateur wrestling world. And I interviewed them at a time, I think this was like 2011, 2012, when like the peak of crossover wrestling was happening. You know, that's when Weidman was starting to break through, and, you know, Mark Munoz was already D1 national champion, was there, and forget about everybody else, and Brock and Kane, and, you know, I could just go on down the list, and Cole Conrad and blah, 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 just so many guys. And I remember them asking, and they, you know, I think they were, in the case of Gable, he didn't necessarily, I think, love the idea of wrestlers going into MMA, but he definitely was very appreciative. Like, hey, this is a great chance for these guys to make some real money. And obviously, you know, we were living with the era of Matt Hughes as well. You know, their success was immediate. Like, it was obvious, you know. And Josh Koscheck. Again, the list is endless of the names I could point out who are like relevant during this time. But, you know, you could tell that, like, at least I felt, you could tell is a strong way to put it. I felt like if there was another option, they would have preferred it. You know what I mean? Like, if there was a way to stay in wrestling, and by the way, USA Wrestling made a bunch of changes to how they paid Olympic athletes, and, you know, college programs were, like, you know, bumping up. It's not many guys who could be hired for a college coaching program, but I'm told that, like, their numbers went up, and like they pivoted in a way to, like, kind of pull some of the wrestlers back. And now with sport jiu-jitsu turning into something that's real, it's like, dude, you know, look at light heavyweight, bro. I make this point all the fucking time, but look at light heavyweight. We had the top 10 almost fully was former D1 wrestlers. And now there's just donks up and down.
Ankalaev, man. I mean, he's not D1, but, you know.
I mean, look, Yuri's a good athlete. He's amazing to watch. I think, especially now that he's cleaning up his defense, it's like really, really great. Obviously, Poaton's Poaton. Ankalaev's a good fighter. I think could have competed in any era. And listen, yeah, I don't want to crap on Reyes. He's turning stuff around, but, you know, it's not much. It's like, you know, those guys are fine, but, like, it's slim pickings after that, and it did not used to be that way at all. It did not used to be that way.
Scary future we're in for if they don't bump the pay or do something.
When I first got back into MMA, I mean, I watched it for a long time and then kind of got out of it during college, then got back into it right after college. I mean, I was watching a little bit in college, but not much. But then I got back into it a little bit after college. You know, this was the era of Tito beating people up, and then Randy beating people up. And even folks forget about this, Long Island. Chuck Liddell was a wrestler in college too. Was it Cal State Poly? I forget the exact university he went to. All those fucking guys wrestled. All of them wrestled collegiately. So, you know, losing that pipeline kind of being slowly turned off. I don't know, making me a little nervous.
Yeah, I'm scared.
All right. With that in mind,
Cal Poly, by the way.
Was it?
Cal Poly. He did.
Yeah. All right. Question number 6 from Brandon. In terms of the present combat sports community's respect, which fighters' achievements... Oh, this is interesting. Okay, here we go. Which fighters' achievements are the most underappreciated or overblown in both MMA and boxing? I tell you what, Long Island Luke, this to me sounds like, it sounds like a great opportunity to do Shots Fired by Cuervo. How about that? As always, brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. Big thanks to our friends at Cuervo. All right, what do you think, Long Island Luke? Who's got it the most underappreciated or overblown in MMA or boxing? What do you think?
I feel like overblown got to be Triple C, man. I know he's not the most fan friendly, so to call him overblown sounds kind of wild. He's an Olympic champion. I'm not going to knock the guy, but like, let's just talk about his UFC championship run for a second. He beats Demetrius in a fight that I thought Demetrius won, but
Okay, but it's close.
it's close, and he did get the W. Okay, not knocking that. Then he goes on to fight TJ, EPO'd TJ, who literally took one punch and crumbled under like a terrible weight cut. You can't really count that as like healthy TJ. Okay. Then he goes and fights Marlon Moraes for the vacant bantamweight title. Marlon Moraes has been knocked out in 7 of his last 8 fights since then. You know, hindsight, probably not a great win. Then he fights Dom Cruz, and I'm not knocking Dom Cruz, probably the greatest bantamweight of all time. But Dom Cruz was coming off a 4-year layoff and like probably shouldn't have even been ranked. And they gave him a title shot against Cejudo. Cejudo obviously beat the brakes off of him. Then they rematch now. That probably goes totally different. And, you know, he comes back. You lose to Aljo, Marab. I mean, those are my guys. Great losses right there. But you're losing to Song Yadong now. You know, it's just like Cejudo totally overblown. He flopped his entire career taking that time off. And just looking back on it, maybe a fluky championship run. I don't know.
And when he was like, you know, probably like after that Cruz fight, right? Who was he going to fight? Maybe Petr Yan. And we missed all of that too. You know what I mean? Like, so there's like an argument like, oh, he sat out during his prime. Like, and I agree with that. Like, to the point you raised, maybe he beats Yan. You know what I mean? Like that version of him in May of 2020, whenever that was, or, you know, maybe he beats Yan. Maybe he beats those guys. But the fact that he didn't and then sat out during that time, you just missed the most relevant possible window, both for financial earning as well as legacy in the end. But the fact that he was an Olympic gold medalist out of high school, you know.
I mean, we're going to look past that. We're talking about his UFC championship run.
I know. Yeah. I'm just saying he is an elite athlete. I mean, of course. But to your point, you raised that men's 2008 Olympic team from the previous question. Askren, DC, him, Andy Rovat. There's a bunch of other guys who were kind of like, you know, either training MMA or fighting MMA or training in MMA gyms anyway. And, you know, I just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, the subsequent Olympic teams have not turned out to be that relevant. And this sort of goes to show what we're talking about here. Yeah. But all right, that's our turn at Shots Fired one more time, brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. Let's keep it moving if we can here, Long Island Luke. We'll go to question number 7. This is from Double Move MMA. If these fights were to happen today, who would you pick? Okay, here we go. And which fight would you be the most interested in seeing? All right, so you give me your answer first. Oh my God, somebody's okay. All right.
Yeah, these are rough.
Okay,
so let's name all 4 first, and then we'll.
Okay, so here's what this person is writing: the 4 fights. Current Jose Aldo versus current Conor McGregor, but at 155. That's a weird one. Prime Ronda Rousey versus, they just say Juliana Pena. I'm assuming her prime too. Mighty Mouse versus Alexandre Pantoja. That's a good one. And then Sean Brady versus Prime Matt Serra. Yeah. All right, Long Island, you're up first. What do you think?
Ranking. I mean, there's a clear number 1 here. It's got to be Mighty Mouse versus Pantoja.
100, like 8 billion %.
Yeah, like I actually want to see that fight, and that fight does seem somewhat attainable. I know DJ retired, but like out of all these, that's kind of on the table. Prime Ronda versus Juliana is literally just Prime Ronda versus anyone. Like that's basically just like saying, do you want to see Ronda Rousey fight again in her prime? Like, sure. Do I want to see her win in 2 minutes? Great. Yeah. Like, all right. Weirdly, I want to say number 2 to me is current Jose Aldo versus current Conor. Not that I'm intrigued by that fight really, but I mean, their first fight lasted, 13 seconds? I mean, it would be nice to see what happens now. At lightweight, you were saying that is weird because Jose Aldo fights at bantamweight now, and McGregor is probably walking around at, 210. But I guess that's an even playing field. You make Conor cut all the way to 55, and Jose gets to bulk up to 50. I don't know. Sean Brady, prime Matt Serra. No disrespect to Matt Serra, Long Island legend, but that fight does nothing for me, I got to say.
Also, I mean, Matt Serra is an important figure in the history of MMA, and as well as American, as well as the American jiu-jitsu scene. But dude, Sean Brady annihilates him. Like, what? How is this even a conversation? And I know it's like, oh, he beat St. Pierre. I was there when he beat St. Pierre. Believe me, I remember it. But we're just talking about a St. Pierre that took him lightly, I think. Certainly avenged it in the rematch. And then more to the point, we're just talking about a guy in Sean Brady who's got, you know, a more modern skill set with more modern best practices. I think Sean Brady makes quick work of him, to be perfectly honest. Now, on the feet, I think folks forget Matt Serra had huge power. So could be kind of fun there. But my answer is almost like yours. I'd go Mouse Pantoja, then I'd go Rousey Pena, then I'd go Aldo McGregor, and then I'd go Brady Serra.
Yeah.
There you go. All right. Question number 8. Happy Friday to L Squared. What is your, quote, hear me out fight? What I mean by that is, what fight do you love that it seems like no one else does and you have to defend it? Mine is Izzy versus Silva. So many people talk negatively about that fight, but I think it was a, dare I say, technical thriller. P.S. I was diagnosed with leukemia back in December. I'm in remission now and receiving consolidation chemo once a month, but I want to thank you guys for providing some great entertainment during the most challenging times of my life. You guys mean a lot to a lot of people. Well, very glad to hear that things are in a improved direction. Keep it up. We support you. Long Island Luke, what do you think about this question, the hear me out fight?
First of all, shout out to Colin. Hope you're doing well. I think it's got to be this fight over my shoulder right here, dude. Usman versus Covington 1. I don't think people really remember that fight. You read it on paper. You go, Kamaru Usman versus Colby Covington. That can't be that great. It was probably boring as shit. They didn't shoot 0 takedowns that entire fight. It was a back and forth stand-up war. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. Colby gets dropped and eventually finished in the 5th round. I mean, dude, that was a banger back and forth fight. I feel like no one mentions that fight anymore.
That's an interesting one. I don't know if I have a hear me out fight in the sense of like one that people like didn't like or didn't fully appreciate in that way. I have more like a bunch of forgotten fights that people just don't know about anymore, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Chris Weidman versus Mark Munoz is actually one of my favorite Contender fights. I just fucking love that fight. It was one-way traffic, but I just loved it. You know, Rampage versus Kevin Randleman is like just an amazing, amazing contest. I don't know. I don't have a good one for this one. I have more just forgotten fights in this particular case. All right. From Hunter. I'm a newer UFC fan. My first card I've watched was McGregor versus Cowboy. Oh, yeah, very new. Is it weird that I actually like keeping up with the storylines and the drama more than the actual fights? I enjoy watching shows like MK Aerials and just YouTube videos in general of the drama in the UFC world and predictions of the fights more than like watching the actual fights. Is this a common thing, or am I on my own here? Long Island Luke, isn't this what has happened to the modern NBA?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, that's not a bad call. I agree with Hunter completely, though, dude. Like, not that I'm not invested if there's not a rivalry, but like rivalries and storylines, drama, all that shit make it so much better. I always say the most hyped I've ever been for a fight was DC Jones 2 or Jones DC 2. And the build to that was so good. They truly hated each other. You felt it. Go watch that promo. I still say BT Sport put out like the best promo I've ever seen for that fight. It's still like, it'll give you chills. It's like 4 minutes long. It's so good. Yeah. Anytime there's a storyline in, I'm way more invested.
Dude, when they traded Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks to the LA Lakers, I've seen maybe 1/4 of the LA Lakers play since then.
Yeah, same.
But I read every possible think piece and podcast about why the Mavericks would do something like that. So to his point, there's just a lot of people. I don't know if it's the internet age or the way we consume media these days. I'm not sure exactly what fully explains it, but I know a lot of people are this way about the NBA, and you can definitely count me as one of them for sure, 100%. I mostly watch the Wizards, who are real bad, and then that's really about it. You know, I didn't watch hardly any. I mean, I've seen again about 1/4 of, you know, Luka playing for the Lakers. Here we go from Joseph. Okay, besides pornography and combat sports, what is a topic you guys know a lot about but typically keep to yourself? That's an interesting one, Long Island Luke. Why don't you give me one?
Yeah, that's a hard one, man. I don't really keep a lot to myself as far as my interest. I feel like, I know he said besides pornography and combat sports, but I feel like combat sports is one of those things when I'm out with people that I keep, like, people don't even realize I'm like a big MMA fan, and then like they'll mention like, oh, that guy looks like he's ready to fight. And I'm like, oh, you guys see the fights last night? You know, and I start rambling and they're like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? And something else though, like beer. I'm pretty into beer, like brewing it and shit like that. And like, me and my girlfriend always go to breweries, and like, I don't know, I feel like I'm that guy who could tell you like, oh, you should get this beer if you like this kind of thing or that. Or, yeah, I don't know. So that would be something that I feel like I know a lot about that I don't really talk about.
Yeah, I mean, like as a 45-year-old dad, I don't know how much time I have for stuff like this, but what I would say is,
Bird watching?
I don't know much about bird watching. That's the thing. I
No
don't know.
more
I don't.
than
I
me.
don't. I don't know what I'm doing. Like
Don't you
what I will
just
tell
look at them? I mean, what else is
you
there?
gotta. You have to kind of study their habits. You have to like sit in a place and like see who's there. What do they do? Who's interacting? What birds show up?
You seem
There's
like
just
you know a lot. I'm just saying.
No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know hardly what I'm looking at. What I will tell you was kind of interesting is, and I made this point before, and like here, I'll show it to you. Do you know what this is?
No.
No, it's not a sex toy. It is. Actually, I think their logo is on it. These are toe spacers.
Oh yeah. All right. We've heard about your toe space.
Yeah, correctos.com if you want to get it. Dude, I what do I know a lot about? Well, again, what I feel like I know a lot about is barefoot shoes. Because understand something, bro. I had divorced parents growing up, right? And I never had cool shoes growing up. Never. Just it didn't exist. And then I finally, get into my 20s and I finally get a little scratch in my 30s. And I'm like, you know what, man, I want to wear the shoes I was never able to wear growing up. That's what I want to do. And I was, dude, after I got married and stuff, I was wearing. I have so many Jordans sitting in my closet that I just fucking loved. They didn't break my feet, but what I realized was doing jujitsu and doing wrestling. I had a very, very. It was not. I didn't have a hard time pressing off my big toe on my left foot. I could not accelerate pushing off my big toe because it was slanted in like this. And I didn't understand what was happening. I didn't know anything about like these conditions or bunions or anything. I didn't know anything about it. And so I just had to look into it and look into it and look into it. And there is obviously still a lot that is unknown. There is some data that, is undercutting to a degree of the barefoot movement. However, getting your toes to splay rather than being this or like, this one being like ganked over like that is actually very, very important for balance. Balance becomes extremely important as you get older. There's just a lot of really like valuable things. And I literally could not use it to accelerate. And I would always have to tape my big toe to my secondary toe, which would kind of pull it over into place. And then I could accelerate off of it. But, you have to constantly wrap before class. You have to constantly unwrap. And then you might be wrapping your fingers too. It just became, I was like, why is everyone else able to like bend their big toes like this? How am I the only one who can't do it? And it led me down this path to a place where I'm now getting barefoot shoes. And you saw the ones I had in studio, like they're good for your feet, but the fashion sense behind them is horrendous. So, dude, I have bought barefoot shoes from Germany, Switzerland, China, the United States, various parts of the United States. I have Vivo, Lems, Feel Grounds, Barbarics. I just could go on down the list. I have Ultras. I have nothing but this at this point. And what I can say is my feet feel a lot better, but I would still say that one big toe has gotten better, way better. I can accelerate off of it a little bit now, but it's still messed up. Like my wife thinks I got it from wearing military boots that like, that scrunch your toes together, I know it sounds boring, dude, but then when you get older, you're like, dude, shit starts like not working. And you have to like actively invest to make parts of your biology work that you took for granted. That's the part that you don't really appreciate when you're too young. You have to be on top of it. So barefoot shoes and like the barefoot movement is something I've actually read a lot about and spent a lot of time experimenting personally. So there you go.
That was
boring as shit.
That was a great Luke Thomas answer there. I'm an expert in barefoot shoes. People are going to love that.
I don't know anybody else like in my orbit who wears them. So like, it's just a thing that I have to kind of like, go down the rabbit hole on. All right. From Gabe, Luke Squared. Favorite and least favorite bits from the show and MMA as a whole. I feel like you got to answer this one. Favorite and least favorite.
All right. Well, least favorite, I wrote this down. The best boyfriend joke. I mean, come on, that's the least favorite skit in this show. From an Australian man's nutsack is a close second. I mean, that's got to be up there. Favorite. I mean, dude, I could go on for days. I couldn't even like think of them all, but like Whippets in an Arby's parking lot, like Joseph A. Bank.
Hell yeah, brother.
You watching Max and Volk 49 times, like Duncan in high school, drinking 50 beers, like there's just, I could go on for days with all the good ones, but yeah, I just love when you guys poke at each other with funny shit. And
Yeah, I mean, you get to a point in life where you're like, who am I trying to impress?
yeah,
Who
exactly.
am I trying to impress? You know, it doesn't matter anymore. So
Best skits from MMA as a whole, though, or best bits.
we never fully fleshed out High Court. We got a little close with it, but the whole idea of High Court, it was my idea. The whole idea of it was
Get high as shit.
no, well, yes, but the plan was dress up silly, act silly, but take a topic that actually is a interesting question, at least in theory, right? Try to find an interesting question you could debate. Is John Jones the greatest of all time, despite all like PED failures? Something like that, right? And then try and actually make a good faith argument around it. We never quite fine-tuned it enough by doing it enough. So I think it had like early promise, but I think we were just scratching the surface on that. But High Court is one to me that I loved, even though I can admit it needed much more fine-tuning, you know.
I feel you. Best bits from like MMA characters. Like I feel like Tito doing the grave digger after getting like that's a good like bit, right? That he
Yeah, that's
does.
a good
I
one.
mean, we gotta shout that out. I know it's recency, but like John Silva barking. I don't know why I fucking love that shit.
I
Dude.
don't love that.
I love it,
Yeah.
dude, because he does it when him and his team, like he was on Embedded, him and his team are like putting their hands in like on 3, let's go. And like, they're like, let's go. And he just does it in the gym and shit. I'm like, this guy is a wild man. I love it.
I was not into that. I was like, okay,
I
just
like
fight him, please. Like,
Chihuihuis was good too before they like totally over.
Bro, you missed Paul Buentello. Don't fear me, fear the consequences.
Yeah, I did miss that.
And they used to call Dana Blaff on the internet, BLAF, built like a fighter. You remember that?
No.
Oh, they used to call him Blaff, BLAF. Yeah, built like a fighter.
Like
there's been a bunch of these, you know, and also like C-level Kane.
Oh, true. Yeah,
motivated BJ kind of thing. You know, there's a bunch of those.
GM3
all right.
with a mustache was 1-1. You know, before.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, let's keep this straight. We've got a bunch to get through, so let's get through these if we can. Abraham says, looking past UFC 314, it's pretty clear that the next true event of note for the UFC is going to be International Fight Week. Those fight nights are good. We'll talk about them at the end of the show. But with that in mind, what would your dream 2025 International Fight Week main card be? Feel free to base this off the potential result of booked fights, i.e. JDM versus Bilal and then Defense versus Islam. All right, I'm going to say main event, Islam Topuria. Now, again, I would say John versus Tom, but I just don't think that's in the cards for International Fight Week at this point. MSG, yeah. So I don't think it's in the cards for that. So I'll say Ilya versus Islam. Then we'll do. I saw Colby Covington leak this. So
I have the same main and co-main because of the Colby Covington thing.
DDP versus Hamzat, which is, by the way, if they put those two fights together on a card, that is sick.
Yeah,
that is sick to do something like that. But beyond that, I don't know who they would even make available, to be honest with you. Like,
I got 3 more for you.
Okay, let me hear.
All right, third title fight, Pantoja KKF, because it doesn't have the most hype around it, so you just throw it as the third title fight on this stacked ass card. Fight below that, I'm going the winner of Ian Garry Carlos Prates versus Sean Brady. Maybe we're killing a contender there, but like winner of that should get the next title shot at
I don't hate that. I don't hate that.
And then opening your card, Charles Oliveira, Paddy Pimblett.
Oh,
right,
dude, that's a fantastic card. I don't have one better than that. That is great.
Yeah, those are some bangers.
What's your early thoughts on those two for the main and co-main?
Islam Ilya, I'm going Islam. You can't bet against Islam. I do think like Ilya probably makes it the closest anyone has, besides maybe Volk the first time. But yeah, like I see it going the distance. Islam though, taking it home. DDP Hamzat is it's so interesting. I feel like if Hamzat can finish him in the first 2 rounds, obviously he'll win. Otherwise, that goes past round 2. I feel like it's DDP's fight. Like, I think if he can survive 10 minutes, he can survive 15 more, you know? And
you know, what's interesting is I feel like Ilya versus Islam is an interesting fight, but the co-main event is also an interesting fight. Again, assuming they make it in this way.
Yeah.
But for like totally different reasons. Like, in other words, the thing that makes Islam Ilya interesting as a fight, not so much the stakes and like who wins the title, but like just the fight itself is like completely distinct from what makes the co-main event an interesting fight, which is one is a like super tactical, technical, very careful fight that has to be fought. I'm sure it would be open up, but you like the consequences of getting it wrong against either guy is quite dire. Whereas I feel like the co-main is going to look like a Three Stooges sketch. You know what I mean? It's just going to be, and you. This is what I mean about MMA. It's like so open in that way, where you can get all these like wild ass kinds of different fight complexions. All right. From Abraham, if you had to pick a specific division and period of time as the best all time, what would it be? This would include a combination of both the quality of fighters competing and the fights they produced. For example, 2010, 2011 light heavyweight when Jones made his title run. That's going to be a good one. What else would you say, Long Island Luke? I mean, it's one of St. Pierre's eras too. He was beating up tough guys left and right.
That's a good call. I was going to say like featherweight in like that 2015-16 era where you got like Jose Aldo, Chad Mendez, Frankie Edgar, Connor, Max, Poirier, even like Cub Swanson was up there, and they were all like kind of fighting each other. So that was fun.
I'm going to say heavyweight, but in particular Pride, circa 2003 and 4 and maybe even 5. When Fedor really began to open up and, beating Nogueira, but you had Nogueira, you had Crow Cop, you had Fedor, you had to an extent Bob Sapp, you had a bunch of crazy, and more than that, Heath Herring and Kazuyuki Fujita, and like, again, this is what I mean about like forgotten fights. Have you ever seen Fedor Nogueira 1?
Yes.
Like where they're amazed at his ground and pound. They've never even seen ground and pound like that. I remember Stephen Quadras being like, I've never seen ground and pound like this. I've never seen somebody with submission defense like this. You forget what good heavyweights look like. That kind of thing to me is kind of lost. But that era, the Pride heavyweights, dude, the Pride heavyweights were doing that when Tim Sylvia was fighting Gan McGee. You know what I mean? Like,
it's hard. It's hard to judge an era in the last like 10 years let's say like last 5 years too. Like we might be going through golden eras of divisions right now, but until their careers are done, it's hard to like really put it in perspective of where it stands.
Current featherweight is.
That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of good divisions.
Unbelievably good. Yeah.
Lightweight, bantamweight, they're all good.
Yeah, they're all. Yeah, I don't know if those are the two. Like, I don't know if current lightweight is like golden era. We'll see. But to your point, like all of them are good.
Yeah,
all of them. All right. From Emilio. Hi, I'm 41 from Peru. I've been a fan of the show since episode 1 and longtime hardcore MMA fan since UFC 1. I do find myself, he says, losing a bit of interest in the sport lately, missing some fights, skipping cards even. But my main problem is that I keep falling asleep during the main events because they are so fucking late. Do you have any advice as a fellow 40 plus for losers to stay up so late to watch the fights? I get paid to do it, so I just get caffeinated. You know what I mean? I don't know how to answer that question because here's what I'm guessing. He's drinking or smoking, and then he's, by the time the main event comes on, I can't help you there, brother. I got to be sober for these, You
just got to keep drinking through it. If you're like done drinking for the night and then plan on watching the fights, you're obviously going to fall asleep. I can't answer this because I'm not over the age of 40 yet, but tune into Main Card Minute. Tune into Luke Thomas Watch Along. We'll keep you awake, bro. We'll keep you awake.
Yeah,
there you go.
Exactly. But like, people always ask me, like, they ask me questions that are relevant to my demo, like age, how long I've been watching the sport, blah blah blah. But they ask it from the perspective of a fan, and it's like I have a different relationship to the sport, so the things that happen around me don't happen to fans. Like, in other words, I can stay up late and my wife will cover it because it's my job. So we just understand taking turns, in these ways. Whereas, I don't know if other marriages would be like, listen, I'm not letting you stay up 40 plus Saturdays a night or a year, and then waking up at noon on Sundays. Like, I don't know how that flies for a lot of families. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
let me pull my chair up.
Exactly. I'm in the same boat though. I mean, I could call you the best husband ever with that last quote though. So wasting Saturday night, making her do everything. Just saying, Luke.
Listen. I paid my dues. You understand?
Yeah,
I paid my dues. All right. Next question.
Oh, wait, we have something before the next question.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Before we get to the next question, I apologize. Let's do this. Let's talk about our good friends at DraftKings. DraftKings, of course, as you know, the crown is yours. Are you guys ready to win some cash during the basketball playoffs? I wish the Wizards were playing. They're not, but okay. Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition, including prize picks. Hit all of your picks and score higher minimum payouts on Pick 6, plus even more cash if you outscore the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. And by the way, here's how this works. New players are going to get 50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. It's simple. It's easy to use. The way in which they set it up makes it a rewarding experience. BC loves it. I know Long Island Luke loves it, and I love it as well. So here's what you're going to do. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code COMBAT, that's combat with a K, for new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 8887-897777 or visit cccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available anywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right, let's fire through some of these if we can, Long Island Luke.
Let's do it.
Let me. Is it all right if I jump around a little bit?
Oh yeah. All right. Yeah. Dude,
all right. Let me think here.
Just let me know the number.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm gonna skip 16. Oh, I like this one. How about number 17 from Eric B and Rakim? Best food scene on the East Coast that isn't NYC. Okay, we got to go to the New Yorker here, rolling his eyes. What do you think?
I mean, you got to answer this question. I feel like you're gonna have a good answer for this.
I don't know if I will. I will tell you what my favorites have been. So, I mean, listen. First of all, if you go to like any major city, it's not that hard to find good food. You know what I mean?
Tell that to Iowa, and they're Mexican.
Well, their Mexican food is, I mean, they're just stealing from those people. It's Miami. Oh, you know what? Our producer says Miami. I'm inclined to agree. It might be Miami. I found the food in Miami to be outrageously good. You know, and obviously it depends on like your culinary preferences, you know, but like I mean, and obviously, you know, from Mexico to Argentina, Hispanic food is wildly different place to place, but in terms of like getting all of that represented in one place and, you know, all of it being, but some of it's obviously very expensive, but much of it can be quite affordable too. Miami's up there, bro. Miami's is good.
Miami's a good call. Carolina barbecue. I feel like that's a big thing. Like we got to.
Yeah, I would say like Charleston, South Carolina, I'm told has a good scene as well.
Barbecue or
in general,
okay.
In general. Baltimore, you know, listen, where are you on crab cakes?
I'll eat them I would eat them. I wouldn't order them, but I would eat it like if they were out on a tray or something.
People in Baltimore, they lose their minds over crab cakes. I like them. I don't love them.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know, if you like them, obviously Maryland and Baltimore in particular is going to be amazing for that. Philly has surprisingly good food. It does. But more than that, though, like it's got. I don't know how good the fine dining is there, but like decent restaurant down, I found to be like quite plentiful. DC is got good food to eat, but I think a lot of it is quite expensive. Yeah, I think Miami's your answer. It's definitely not Atlanta. Atlanta can go suck a dick. I'm not. Fuck Atlanta. All right. Let's see. Let me pick one here. Okay. How about question 19 from Mark? All right. He says, from Mark, I hope this email finds you well. My question is whether Oliveira is a good matchup against Paddy following 314. I do not know if this would be contingent on Topuria and timing, Topuria having not fought since late October and Oliveira late November. If one expects Oliveira to beat Paddy, what factors led to Paddy's overwhelming technical knockout over Chandler, where Oliveira went to decision with Chandler last November? So he's kind of asking about MMA math. What is your read on that?
I mean, I don't love doing MMA math. Also, like, I don't know. Me and Chuck were talking about this yesterday, this fight, possible fight, Charles versus Paddy. And like, not that I would favor Paddy, but it's certainly winnable for Paddy. Like, whereas I feel like Arman is not that winnable for Paddy. I think you disagreed with that, but I feel like Arman runs right through Paddy. But Paddy Charles is pretty intriguing. Like we've all seen Charles pre-becoming a champion, and I think we all still have that in the back of our mind. And it's like, damn, I could see a world where Paddy turns him into the old Charles. So
I would mostly agree with that analysis. I mean, people always ask like, oh, how could it, again, playing MMA math. First of all, remember, you leave a piece of yourself every time you go into the octagon. You have like a blood and guts fight, which virtually every Chandler fight is. He left a piece of himself after that one in against Oliveira. And I know you're like, oh, well, that wasn't the worst beating he's ever taken, but it doesn't matter. Like the accumulative total can be quite bad. So I think that's part of it. The second part is, dude, youth. I think people just don't understand what youth does. I mean, we do intuitively, but like the feeling of like you can go up against someone who's like real skilled and kind of older and maybe hang around a little bit. And then you go up against someone who's not as skilled, but much younger. And the dude, like the physical differences they can be overwhelming, quite literally. I think that's what you saw. Also, fucking Paddy's good, dude. When he came to the UFC, I didn't see anything impressive about him. I mean, he had good back control and stuff like that, but nothing like crazy impressive. Dude, he's good now. He's good now. He's a very good fighter. And that's the other part too. Those leg kicks and that mount he had, where that high mount where he was high up underneath Chandler's armpits and he's raining down punishment. Dude, he's physical now. And I think that's transformed his game a little bit, where if you have good back control, but you're scrawny, like a Mikey Musumeci, you have to be very technical. And he is technical, to be sure, but you can dial that back a little bit to let the brawn play out if you've got it. Dude, he's got brawn. He's got more brawn than Charles Oliveira. You can say that. I'm not saying to your point, I'm not saying Paddy's more skilled than him, but he's got more brawn. Now he does.
Yeah.
Dude, that makes up for a lot.
There's a lot of tough matchups for him, but if they like do match make it right, he could definitely become a champion. But like, I don't see him beating Islam. I don't see him beating Ilya. I don't see him beating Arman. So like, if those three are in your way,
dude, the Arman thing, Arman is physically extremely impressive and his wrestling is impressive. He's only got good ground and pound when the person relents to being on their back, not when they are on their knees or trying to build height. And I don't understand how people don't see this. Like, that's not enough. That's not enough to win a title. It's not, and especially not at 55. Of course, a big punch can land, anything can happen. He's got big power. Okay, fine. But like, you have to build these other conditions into place in order to win, and he doesn't do that. At least he hasn't historically very well. Maybe he'll work on that. He's still young. Right, he's still young.
I'm curious what his next fight is, because I don't think they're giving him the title shot.
Nor should they.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should. I know that they did, and that they're taking it back, but I actually think it's in his interest to not take it.
Yeah, I could see that.
I believe that. All right, from our friend Daz, number 20, Aloha L&L. Regarding Volk's technical mastery and ability to adjust, how is GSP similar or different? GSP, Volk is highly unique. There are not many guys who try to manipulate rhythm and timing and distance standing up in the way that he did. Like St. Pierre did it a little bit, or he would feint, get a reaction jab, cut an angle. Like he's doing all the same things as well, but not as forcefully and not as concertedly and not as often. Right. And the other part too is after he got walloped by Sarah, after that he turned a bit more into a wrestler, and so it was more about just blending the two, which of course Volk does as well. But to me, Volk is like, who is, people always think of the best strikers as the guys who have the best knockouts, and getting great knockouts can obviously be a function of being a great striker. But another thing that makes a great striker, I've said this before, dude, he's Mayweather. He's manipulating these guys in ways where they can't get going. They don't know what else to do to pivot out. They are subject to having their timing disrupted, their rhythms and their patterns disrupted. They can't get close. When they do get close, they get cracked. And it just goes on like this. And he never puts them away. Not never, but, he doesn't always put them away. But, against a guy like Lopez, he's just fighting underwater the entire time. St. Pierre didn't do that. St. Pierre was not like that. St. Pierre was kind of more of a blending of the different parts while also having fakes and feints and, a great jab and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? Am I explaining myself clearly?
Yeah, I pretty much missed the GSP era, you know what I mean? So I was going to let you take the lead on that anyway, but yeah.
It was glorious, bro.
I know.
He was. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Kamaru. He's the second best of all time. It wasn't like St. Pierre's. St. Pierre's was something different, you know.
Yeah.
And also, he was a groundbreaking because it was only relevant to Canada. But when he got the Under Armour sponsorship, we were like, whoa. And then he got Gatorade, and we were like, holy shit, you know.
That's
and
true.
this is when everyone was wearing their t-shirts to press conferences, and he's showing up in a suit and tie. It was just a different time. He was ahead of the curve for sure, you know. All right. From Michael, I've noticed that regardless of the sport, so MMA, baseball, basketball, etc., anytime there are two brothers who compete in the same sport, there's always one that's significantly better than the other. Why do you guys think that is? So who would be some brothers in other sports? The Giannis and his brother in basketball.
There's a shitload in basketball. The Lopez twins, the
Yep.
Morris twins,
Yep.
the three brothers, the Grants, Jeremy Grant,
Oh, right.
the Holidays, Drew Holiday and his brothers. There's a lot, but maybe because there's so many in basketball, I feel like we could, like the Morris twins. They're arguably the same.
Yeah, but
skill level.
who is it? Markeith and
Marcus.
Marcus. I mean, I'm not saying they're the same, but there's not a huge drop off between them.
Yeah, whereas like Brooke and Robin Lopez, Brooke was always way better, kind of thing. And,
Yeah.
Oh, Powell and Mark Gasol, how could we forget them? They're both
Yep.
pretty. They were both
They're
all
both pretty good.
stars.
They're both pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't.
Do
We
you
don't
remember?
have
Do you remember Mark Hughes, Matt Hughes' brother?
No.
Yeah, he had a twin brother named Mark, who was also fucking, built like one of these guys. He was really good. He was really good.
Wayne Gretzky's brother played in the NHL. Like, there's a lot of guys that I don't know. I just feel like it's more of, ooh, this guy's a spectacle rather than we're brothers. One of us has to be better than the other, kind of thing. Like,
But also, like, why would brothers be equally talented? I mean, some will be. To your
they're
point,
different people. Like,
they're different people. They might have slightly different work ethics, slightly different focuses, slightly different genetic, differences that over time just lead to different results. Also, if like one is older and they're good, then the younger one is like way better. The other one might just like, this is what it looks like when they're really good. You kind of just not give up, but like, realize that my path is limited.
yeah.
But also, if you and your brother make it to the NBA, something went right.
True.
Something went right.
True.
All right. From Jack, while younger than Chandler, is Aspinall similarly at risk of wasting his prime waiting around for a Jones fight that may not happen? Would he be better off fighting someone like Gon and further developing his skills and increasing his leverage over Jones in UFC? What do you think?
I don't think the answer is fighting more, but I somewhat agree with this, dude. How old's Tom Aspinall? Like 28?
28-ish, I think.
Let's see. Tom Aspinall's 32. All right, a little older than I thought.
Okay,
but still,
heavyweight 32
yeah. So he's got 10 years easily left. I don't know, because the bummer is if it does turn out a Chandler situation and you just waited all this time and then John just retires and it's like, well, you should have fought Cyril Gane and whoever, but like there's no clear there's no third guy at heavyweight. So
I think if you're Tom right now, you wait. You have to. This is too big to jeopardize. You have to wait. But if it doesn't happen this year, you move on.
Yeah.
You have to move on. Like, you cannot sit on the shelf in your prime like this and waste this kind of time. And I grant, to your point, who's he going to fight? These are questions for the UFC to figure out, not for you and I. But I give it this year. I give Jones every opportunity. There's no reason why they can't fight this year. But if this year falls away, that's it. Move on.
If we get to like July and they still haven't announced them for MSG, then I'm kind of losing hope at that point.
Yeah, I agree. But we'll see. I'm still holding out. Again, I'm 50-50 on it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, from Max. What do you make of a potential Dricus? Oh, we just talked about this. What do you make of a potential Dricus versus Hamzat matchup? Is Hamzat's ground game too good for Dricus, or does Dricus' size give him an advantage? So you mentioned that you thought that if it went past the second, it's Dricus' fight to lose. What happens in the first two rounds?
The same thing that Hamzat does in any fight where he just bell rings and he's fucking shooting on you, and maybe he doesn't get him down the first time, maybe not the second time, but by the third time, he's getting Dricus down. And the real question is Hamzat's gas tank. We saw him go, 3 rounds with Usman? Like, we've never seen him go 5. you just can't trust it. You can't. And Dricus has fought 5 rounds, what, 3 fights in a row now or
Mhm.
something. So like, or close to it. He finished Izzy earlier, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I don't know. It's more of a what if. Like, I don't know Hamzat's gas tank past round 2, shooting takedowns the entire. That's pretty fucking tiring. Like, I don't know, but Dricus probably more well-rounded. I know that feels weird to say because Dricus doesn't really look great anywhere, but like Hamzat is definitely a one-dimensional guy. Yeah, he flatlined GM3, but like even that was, I don't want to say fluky, but it was like the first punch he threw in that fight and it connected, you know? I don't know.
Mhm.
What's your take?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. There's. I mean, amazing that Hamzat has been in the UFC all this time, and we still have like deep unknowns about him. You
Yeah,
know,
right? Because he never fights.
he never fights. Dricus is a known quantity. He's unpredictable in certain ways, but he's a known quantity at this point. You know, Izzy obviously fully known quantity. Like these guys who've got, that's the tough part about being a champion. We've discussed it a million times where there's so much tape on you and you've had to go through so many contenders. You would just become a very known and understandable quantity. Hamzat is not that, at least not fully. I mean, obviously some things are known, right? But that's why this fight fucking rules, bro. This fight rules. I really, really hope they make this for internet. I'm gonna say it again, man. If they make Topuria Islam, and then this one is your co-main, I don't know what else fight fans would be expecting at that point.
To be honest, I'll take one of those as just the main event.
I agreed.
Yeah,
I'm getting greedy saying I would love to have both, but I would take either. Yes.
Yeah, I'd
I would
be
take
equally as hyped for just one. Like,
all right. From Daz. Question for Long Island Luke. Here we go. What was your most memorable betting win, money won, and or fight watching experience? And what was your worst bad beat? Great question.
All right. So most memorable win had to be, I mentioned this a lot here. Dricus Duplessis over 3.5 by submission over Izzy. I do this thing called a bet generator on my watch alongs where people literally just blindly vote for who's going to win. They don't even know who they're voting for. It ended up being Dricus. It ended up being submission. It ended up being over 3.5 and it fucking hit. It was plus 2,800. So like culmination of all those things, like it just being randomly generated and it actually hitting and how much money we won. It was dope. That was awesome. Worst bad beat. I got a couple for you here. Shevchenko Grasso 2. I can't remember who the underdog was. Let's just say it was Shevchenko. I had a bet on Shevchenko, and then I took Grasso by decision. I'm sitting there going, as long as this fight goes the distance, I'm cashing one of these. And I'm like counting my money already, and then it goes the distance, and it's a fucking draw, and I lost all the bets. So that was a bummer. And Alex Morono, Santiago Ponzinibbio, I had the over 2.5, and Ponzinibbio knocked him out with 2 minutes and 31 seconds left in round 3. That was pretty bad. And I got to give Gaff a shout out for the Holloway Gaethje fight. He had fucking Holloway by decision, which Holloway was already an underdog. And he took him by decision. He was looking like a genius the entire fight. We're like, damn, Gaff, you knew Holloway was going to win this. And then he gets knocked out. We all lose our minds because that was one of the greatest knockouts in UFC history. Gaff sitting there, stone-faced, like probably just lost a shitload of money. But that was one of the worst bad beats ever. 4 minutes, 59 second knockout. Like, it's rough.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I had no idea. That's amazing.
It was pretty funny, but yeah.
That's amazing. I remember the first time I went to Vegas with work. No, not the first time. The first time I went to Vegas in a non-Marine Corps context. So for like my civilian job. And I was like, I'd never gambled. Like I'd done slot machines and like bullshit stuff, but I never sat at a table, So I was like sat at a table and it was like I think it was like blackjack. And I was like, all right, I got $250. I'm just gonna play it out. If however long it lasts is how long it lasts. It lasted 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It lasted 10 minutes.
It's usually what happens. And then you're like,
I was like, okay, well, that was that.
Yeah,
that was that. All right, let's do this if we can. Let's talk about. There's some upcoming fights that we kind of just want to lean into. So obviously, there's no UFC this weekend, and I think there's one the week after that. Let's talk about that if we can for just a second here, Long Island Luke, which is the UFC Kansas City main event. I want to talk about that relative to another one in just a second, but let's set this up. April 26th. It's going to be Ian Garry taking on Carlos Prates. Carlos Prates, by the way, has a YouTube channel. Did you watch that at all, by the way?
No, I haven't seen it.
No? He puts out a lot of training footage on there. I wanna lean into the future here a little bit. So let's look ahead if we can. And by the way, this is brought to you by our friends at Total Wireless, the official wireless provider of the UFC. Get unlimited data that won't slow you down. Total Wireless. We thank them for their patronage here. Let's talk about a little bit. What would you say is what has you most hyped about that fight?
Hopefully proving everyone wrong, because if you guys remember, before this fight was even booked, I said, ooh, Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. I think Ian Garry runs right through Carlos Prates, and everyone gave me shit for it. And sure, maybe runs right through was a little harsh on my end, but I do favor Ian Garry in this fight. And I feel
let me play devil's advocate. Why are you so high on Ian Garry? Like, what is it about him that gives you confidence? I'm not saying you're wrong. I just want to hear it.
It's not that I'm necessarily so high on him. You know, BC likes to say his best win was the loss to Shavkat. Like, obviously,
I hate that argument.
Obviously, he's half joking when he says that, but like, I somewhat agree. Like, Ian Garry's stock went up for me personally after that fight. Like, did I ever think Ian Garry was championship material? No. But after seeing that fight, I said, you know what? Maybe one day. Like, he looked pretty damn good. Carlos Prates, similar to John Silva this past weekend, like, I just feel like you're getting all these quick knockouts. I haven't really seen you tested in your full game. I haven't seen you taken down. I haven't seen that. Like, Ian Garry's smart. He's going to game plan smart. He's going to get this fight to the ground if he needs to. I say if he needs to, because for all you know, he's going to have success on the feet. I don't know. Obviously, there's always the threat of the knockout. Gary's never been knocked out, though. I don't know. I favor Ian Garry in this fight a lot.
Do you think if Ian Garry runs through Prates, do you think he'll become a fan favorite at that point? If he runs through to the point you raised, not beat him, not scrape by him, smoke him.
I don't know. I kind of think this is a lose-lose from a fan standpoint for Ian Garry, because you're giving me that look. I mean, Ian Garry's already not very liked, and Carlos Prates is like beloved by everyone just for the fact that he smokes cigarettes. Like,
dude, that's how you become liked, is you beat heroes. People think it's when you beat villains. You
smoke cigarettes.
Yeah, I know. Carlos Prates is cool. Like, the fact that he smokes, menthols or whatever is fucking awesome. But like, this is the same thing with Topuria. Like, oh, he beat Volk and everyone hated him. Then he beat Max, another beloved fighter, and then you notice the worm begin to turn a little bit. It's when you destroy the things that people hold dear. If you do it enough, then you become the thing that they hold dear. I've seen it too many times to think otherwise.
I think the best arc for Ian would be, it won't be in this fight as far as being beloved. Like, he'll beat Prates, but if he beats Bilal, fans are going to love him, because people really just hate Bilal at that point. You know what I mean? Like, also,
like, it's one of those things with Volk in the same where he's talking about, like, adversity, which is it. I agree that, like, if he beats Prates, that won't be the deciding factor by any stretch. But if he does beat Prates and then, let's say, wins the title after that, I'm just making something up, people will see him, having had to eat all that shit and get, destroyed in the media, and then come back and take on tough challenges and overcome them and then achieve at the highest level. And they'll be like, wow, he persevered. He showed all those people. And then all of a sudden people will still make jokes about him or whatever, but I think you'll see at a bare minimum, you'll see a massive drop off in the negativity, a massive drop off.
But it would have to be a finish. I think if he skates by on a decision, people are just going to go, oh, he didn't even win that fight. Prates is still whatever,
Yeah. Yeah, there is a risk there. Now, if Prates is to win, it has to be on the feet, and it has to be because he has more dynamic punching power, right? Like, I don't even know what else it would be at that point.
Yeah, like, again, is there a world where he knocks Ian Garry out? Sure, but I don't see that. I think he just, outstrikes him through 25 minutes, but like, even that sounds hard. When I say that out loud, I'm like, I don't know if he can do that, dude.
Let me do you have any betting on this one all ready to go?
Not yet. I mean, we're still 2 weeks out, so gotta
I've
keep some money in the account.
I've got it. Our friends at DraftKings, ready?
Yeah, hit me.
Carlos Prates -108. Ian Garry -112. Wow. They've got it as a pick'em, brother. How do you bet pick'ems? Do you just stay away from them, or you just parlay them?
No, I mean, normally I would just, something like this where we're 2 weeks out and I see it's a pick 'em, I'm waiting this out until someone becomes plus money, because the lines are going to fluctuate.
Right.
I do have the opening. So Ian Garry opened at -140. and
Oh,
Prates opened at plus 125. So
so they're kind of coming together, maybe switching places.
money's coming on Prates, yeah, which I'm into because I would take Ian Garry as a dog in this fight for sure.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if it stays a pick'em like this, I'd probably stay away from money line and do like an over under.
All right. If he ekes out a decision here, you don't give him a title shot, right? There's just no way.
No, because you got Sean Brady sitting there, you got Shavkat sitting there. Like, no,
Yeah.
no.
You can't jump him.
That's why I like that Sean Brady winner of this fight because Shavkat's waiting in the wings anyway. We don't know what's going to happen with JDM. Bilal. For all we know, Bilal loses, and now Islam's coming up. Like, there's way too much going on up top where it makes sense to kind of kill off one of the contenders with this versus Brady.
Yeah, I agree. There's a bit of a bottleneck going, like kind of culling a little bit of the herd, at least temporarily anyway. I think makes a lot of sense. Dude, I love this freaking fight. I mean, there's sometimes, I've said this before and I'll say it again. There are times, okay, your mileage may vary. Obviously, everyone's mileage is going to vary. But for me, formative experiences in my fandom were watching Jones as a contender surging, watching Conor as a contender. I didn't like Conor's personality. In fact, I found it I feel very vindicated that he's turned out to be like a horrible person because I hated his personality from the word go. But the point is how magical was his rise? It was one of the most insane things we've ever seen. Same thing with, to an extent, not as quickly, but Ronda Rousey, but Khabib would be another one. I always joke about this. I did a sports radio show, and this was after the sale of the UFC, and they're like, "Who's the next big thing?" And I was like, Khabib Nurmagomedov. And then I went back on the show like 2 years later when he was, like or maybe it was like right after the Conor fight, like 3 years later. And they're like, "Man, you really called it back then." And I was like, "Guys, it wasn't hard. It was not hard. It was not hard to figure that out, because one of the most interesting times in a fighter's life is when they're a contender and you just don't know exactly how good they are. And each fight is like, well, can they beat? They can't beat this guy, can they? And then they do it, and then they do it, and then they do it. Now, obviously, he lost to Rakhmonov, but I still feel like he's young enough and he performed ably enough in that fight where if he wins this one, I'm not going to put him on the level of Khabib or Jones or Conor, but I'm saying I like this part of a fighter's career, the exciting surge up the contendership queue. It's really fun for me personally.
That's such a good call too. Like, you don't know. I remember like Whitaker's rise, and like he's fighting Jacare, and he was like a huge underdog, and everyone's like, he's not beating fucking Jacare. He knocks him out. Then he's fighting Yoel Romero. Everyone's like, all right, but he's not beating Yoel, and then he beats you twice. I love that shit.
It's so fun. It's so fun. Everyone always thinks, oh, it's not fun until they get to the title. And like the title reign, if they can have one, is obviously, like these are the biggest fights they'll have. But when you're discovering someone's magic piece by piece, I don't know. That's when I get hooked on a fighter. That's how same thing with Topuria. I was like, oh, he's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Even when he got his shit rocked by Jai Herbert, I was like, oh, this guy is this one's different. This one's different. Now, let me ask a question, because let's compare it. So what we've got with the UFC is we got a week off coming up, and then we're back at it with this fight here, this Ian Garry Carlos Prates fight. But the week after, the UFC is going back to Minnesota. They're going to go to Des Moines, I believe.
Iowa, not Minnesota.
Say again?
You said Minnesota.
No, I said
Iowa.
Des Moines.
Yeah, you said Minnesota, and then you said
before that. Oh, sorry. Iowa. But Midwest, Iowa.
Same thing.
It's just flyover country. Who cares? No, I'm teasing Iowa. I'm teasing. Which main event do you like better? Garry versus Prates or Sandhagen versus Figueiredo? Because I got to tell you, for me, both of these main events are freaking awesome.
Yeah, there's no wrong answer here. I guess like you have to say Garry versus Prates is the better main event, just because Prates is undefeated in the UFC, 4 knockouts. Ian Garry, I think, is like 8-1 in the UFC. The one loss being Shavkat. Like, they're both on great run, a cumulative 12-1 record in the UFC. Whereas you go the other side, you got Figgy, I think, is 3-1 at bantamweight. Obviously, he has a longer UFC career, but mostly a flyweight. And you got Sandhagen, who like is coming off that loss to Umar. Sandhagen kind of loses every time he steps up to the big name, like that top 3. And not that Figgy's there anymore. I actually favor Sandhagen in this fight, but it might be a funner fight. It might be a more all-action fight, but I don't think it's the better fight on paper. Like Ian Garry, Carlos Prates is
I actually, so I have a weird feeling about it. First of all, I think both fights will be great. I think you agree with that. Like,
Yeah.
you just got 4 talented people here. So, and one of them former champion. So there's that. The fight between Sandhagen and Figueiredo might actually end up being a better fight. It could end up being a better fight. But the stakes and the intrigue of Garry and Prates is significantly higher for me than Sandhagen versus Figueiredo. So, like, I think you get good fights either way, but I could see it that we're midway through, or we're now into May 4th, right? The Sunday after. And we're like, you know what? That last main event was better than the one before, but I didn't care as much because of the other sort of factors involved here. Is that a fair read for you?
100% agree. Also, like, I know you're not asking this, but I do think that Iowa card is better on paper than the Kansas City card. I'd have to really look at them face to face, but just the fights that I remember hearing, like Bo Nickel RDRs, the co-main on Iowa, like that's pretty
so good
fight. Yeah, like
so good.
So there's a lot that I'm looking forward to between both of these cards, even if I'm going to side with Garry.
Yeah, and I'm looking up odds for the May 3rd card. Nothing yet for our friends at DraftKings, so we'll have to wait on that one. Although they do have odds. DraftKings does have odds for that Bo Nickel fight. Minus 245 yeah. Bo Nickel, plus 200 RDR. Are you going to take some cash on RDR?
No, I actually think that's like a pretty cheap price for Bo Nickel. I might just throw him in a parlay. Minus 245. That's not bad.
Well, one more time, I just want to remind everybody, this has been brought to you by Total Wireless, the official wireless provider of the UFC. Get unlimited data that won't slow you down. And of course, this podcast is sponsored by Total Wireless, the official wireless partner of the UFC. When you're streaming the fight or sharing those takedown highlights, you need a wireless provider that keeps you close to the action. With Total Wireless, you're covered by the Verizon 5G network, so you don't have to worry about your connection being knocked out at the biggest moments. It's not something you can usually say about a wireless provider, but Total Wireless really has your back. They're in your corner every second of the day, so you never miss a thing. They keep you covered for just $25 a month with 4 lines without sacrificing the essentials like speed. With Total, you get unlimited 5G data so you can stay ahead of the action and keep up with every knockout. Total Wireless understands you can't afford surprise blows any more than your favorite fighter can. That's why the price is guaranteed for 5 years, taxes and fees included. The best fighters don't make it to the octagon alone. They have all-in support along the way, and it shouldn't be any different for you. So visit TotalWireless.com or visit your local Total Wireless store to learn more about how Total Wireless can be in your corner. 5G access requires a 5G capable device and a 5G service area. Monthly rate on the Total Base 5G Unlimited plan for new subscribers applies only to the monthly rate for your plan. Additional terms apply. See website for details. Before we get out of here, Long Island Luke, very quickly, do you bet on boxing too, right?
Yes.
Did you bet on the Gervonta Davis-Lamont Roach fight?
Yes, I had. What did I have? I think I had Gervonta by decision, so I did not win.
How would you bet the rematch? Now, obviously, the odds are going to be dependent, but what would be an enticing bet for you, given how the first one went?
Yeah, again, I got to see the odds because, like, if you're giving Lamont Roach is still going to be the underdog. Let's be real.
Yes, he will.
He'll probably be like pretty cheap, like plus 300. I'm thinking something like that.
But I would definitely take the over. It's going to go the distance,
well,
right?
True. I was going to say I'll probably repeat my bet and do Gervonta by decision, but I'll also probably hedge it with just Lamont Roach money line worth a flyer on it.
Yeah, fair enough. Now, our friends, where of course this is an All the Smoke production here, our friends at Art of Ward, the Andre Ward show and content over on his YouTube channel, he sat down with Lamont Roach, who of course has now been quite the hit. A lot of people think he won as a result of everything that happened. He sat down with Lamont Roach, and it's on this week's episode of Art of War. Andre Ward, as I mentioned, sits down with Lamont Roach, fresh off of his highly publicized draw with Gervonta Tank Davis. The two discuss Roach coming up in the DMV. Let's go. Alongside Tank, what went right for him on fight night and the potential rematch. Tune into the full interview on the All the Smoke Fight YouTube channel. Let's take a look at this clip.
What was your read on Gervonta going into the fight, him personally?
I think he doubted himself. Hell of a talent. Hell of a puncher. Super, super, super good accuracy. I think that's what leads to the most of his knockouts, honestly. but he doubted himself.
Why you say
And he
that?
been doing that since a kid.
Yeah. Something you know.
That's just something I know. So that played a little bit into the fight. I think especially when there's not a lot of animosity, because you got to think a lot of people he fought, they just have differences. They be into it or whatever the case may be. I don't got no problem with him, and he don't got no problem with me. So I think he was trying to find something to boost his morale or get him going or whatever the case may be. And he tried to, like the betting me that he gonna knock me out and stuff like that. That didn't go too well for him.
Did y'all bet?
Oh, we bet and we shook on it.
He paid up?
He changed his number.
You ain't heard from him. You ain't got that check.
I ain't got that
You
yet.
ain't got that check.
He changed his number, Slim.
Yeah.
So, but that would be a conversation for another day.
Bro, I went to
Changed
this
his
guy's
number.
Yeah, that's so funny. He changed his number. It's like, you ever seen that Chris Rock sketch? It's like, when I get bills, I just move. You remember that? You ever seen that one? So great. Dude, I went to Lamont's gym. I cannot overstate this to you. I was texting with his dad because I interviewed him long before the fight, like October before the fight. So months and months before. And I was texting with his dad. And his dad gave me the address of the gym, and I looked it up on MapQuest or whatever, not MapQuest, Google Maps. And I was like, all right, let me plug this in. And we went. And it's not far from my house, actually. I mean, it's like, 15, 20-minute drive. It's pretty close. And then we get there, and it's just a Baptist church, but not like a huge one, like a real modestly sized one, like very, 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 modest. And it's on this like gigantic like gravel parking lot. And I pull in, and there's nobody there. There's like nothing there. And like, there's like sheds and stuff with like, equipment or, just it looked like just detritus. Like it didn't look like anything. And I texted his dad, and I'm like, yo, where's the gym? And he actually texted back, ha, ha, ha. And I was like, he eventually came out and pulled me in. Dude, it's a shed that has like no heating. It has electricity because they run like a giant power cord from the church, like a mile down the thing. And it, like every amazing and perfect boxing gym, it smells like boxing gloves and sweat and whatever. There's duct tape on everything. Everything's dirty. It was perfect. It was perfect. If you go into a boxing gym that's a whole lot nicer than that, walk the fuck out.
Yeah.
You're in the wrong place, brother. Let me just say that. And dude, they're producing world champions in this. And I asked them, like, how do you guys stay warm in the winters? They have a little bit of a heating mechanism in there, but he was like, we just spar
Work
in
out
sweatshirts.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we just spar in sweatshirts. I was like, fuck, bro.
I
These guys
remember
were tough.
I remember you sharing the picture of that. I think it was on your live chat or something.
Yeah.
Like, photo. It's like literally a dirt parking lot, like just a warehouse in the back.
You would drive by it and never in a million years think that world champions were produced there.
Yeah.
Like the last thing in your mind would ever be that. They're tough. They're tough people, bro. Tough people. So shouts to him. All right, but that is it for us today. Long Island Luke, one more time, plug what you're doing for tonight's PFL broadcast.
Tonight, I'm doing the full card watch along. I don't know off the top of my head what time it is, guys, but you should know by now. Just go to pfl.com or pflmma.com, whatever it is. But yeah, full card watch along. You could subscribe to me. Main card minute. Follow me on social, all that good stuff. Follow Luke too. NBC.
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to be on vacation for a little bit, not too long, maybe 4 or 5 days. I'll be back. We'll have a great show for you guys on Monday. I don't know what the fuck we're going to talk about, but we'll figure something out. We always do.
PFL. We're recapping PFL.
Oh my God. Well, how the mighty have fallen. You know what? But the fight should be good. Well, we'll figure it out just the same. So thanks to everyone who made the show possible here today. Thanks to our producer, Matt. Thanks to you, Long Island Luke. Shouts to BC. Shouts to all of you who sent questions. And of course, you can always reach the show, morningcombat@gmail.com. That's the place to go. One more time, morningcombat@gmail.com. So thanks to all of you who made today's show possible. Thanks to all of our sponsors. We're out of here. Enjoy your weekend, folks. And until next time, may all of your gains be loyal.